Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to Broadcast to Post, KeyCode Media's series hosting industry professionals discussing broadcast and production technology topics that you care about. Today we're talking about remote productions for media companies. I'm your host, Jeff Sengpiel, Chief Technologist here at KeyCode Media. We've got a jam-packed episode today featuring an interview with Brad Boim at the NFL Network discussing how they've been able to lift and shift their production pipeline into the cloud to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. We also have Adobe, BeBop, and Telestream featuring short demonstrations of their remote post-production workflows, available today. But if I'm being perfectly honest, it looks like it's a leap into the future of production. Please stick around at the end for a live Q&A with you, the audience. I want to talk first about if cloud even makes sense for your business. So we're going to talk about money. Why is it important that we chat first about money when it comes to cloud post-production? Why is it critical that we have peeps like CFOs and senior management on board before we begin? It's simply so different in how these finances are handled that it doesn't make sense to the traditional school of how things have been paid for in post-production. So while it's true that from the highest financial level, capital expenditures, CapEx, and operational expenditures, OpEx, both still end up being expenditures, X, on the balance sheet at the end of the year. But if I make a $100,000 investment in equipment, and in amortizing that over 3 years, bill it monthly to my American Express card at almost $2,800 a month, someone will be in to talk to me shortly after the first billing statement, usually with a pair of scissors to cut up that card. We don't pay for capital equipment purchases in this way. So this means that because we are looking at such a new and different way of handling these costs, that the finance and leadership teams must be on board before we pull the train out of the station, or this train isn't leaving at all. CapEx is a very predictable cost structure. You build it, and then it's used. The more you use it, the more return on that investment. OpEx is not an investment. It is paying for what is used as it's used, and these costs don't neatly fit into the same spreadsheets. A typical on-prem, episodic, or theatrical editing environment with 4 editing stations, 2 producer setups, and about 40 terabytes of storage is close to $100,000. The usual math for this is 100 grand divided by 3, then divided by 52, then divided by 40 to work out an hourly number of a cost of just over $16. This number, however, lowers as the system is used more. An 80-hour duty cycle per week drops the cost to $8 per hour. And after 3 years of depreciation, that cost is now 0. But that's equipment only. There are other variable costs that come into play. Facility rent, power, cooling, installation, and support. They continue past 3 years. A few things about an on-prem setup. It begins to age as soon as you take delivery. All gear eventually becomes obsolete and needs replacement. If you need additional systems, that's an additional cost and lives in one place. And while it can be remote controlled, as we've all learned over the past few months, it is primarily designed to be the facility. On the other hand, what do you get for $100,000 in a cloud environment? First of all, once the cost per hour is determined, it doesn't decrease with more use or disappear after depreciation. It is a constant. The variable costs are different as well. Rent, power, and cooling, they're no longer part of the consideration. They're already baked in. The math is reversed. It's cost per hour times actual hours in use. So if you start those 6 systems working and they continue working 24/7 non-stop for almost 4 months with 100% full storage, you'll reach $100,000. So that works out to a cost of almost $37 per hour. So a few things about that. The cloud setup never grows old. As new hardware is implemented into the cloud, it's simply available and replaces the old. If you need an additional system for a limited duration, you simply spin it up for a few minutes and shut it down when you're done. If that duration happens to be 2 hours to render an output, You use that time while the editorial work is continued on a different computer. Systems cost nothing while off. A physical system still has that continued cost, whether you're performing revenue-generating activity on it or not. Also in the cloud, storage prices fluctuate. The total storage spend depends upon not how much space you have, as we've all been used to, but how much space you are actually using at a given moment, which is actually shaped like a bell curve in an amount needed and cost over the length of the project. And the $37 per hour figure I mentioned, it's the maximum possible cost. I use the costliest cloud provider with all the storage in use all the time and all the bells and whistles added in. Your actual costs in operation are most likely going to be substantially less expensive. There have also been a few interesting things that have come to light as cloud editorial has become a process that has begun to pick up commercial acceptance. The first, and some editors aren't going to like this, is editing systems are not actually in use 40 hours a week. It's been shown over time the actual use rate is between 32 and 35 hours a week, which also affects that $16 per hour figure I mentioned earlier for on-prem stuff. The second is because process work like rendering and outputs can be delegated to other easily spun up systems in a cloud. Editors are able to be a lot more focused on the creative, spending no time waiting for processing type tasks like renders or outputs to complete. So let's take the number from the cloud and put it into the methods we have been using to account for our capitalized on-premises gear, not taking into account reduced storage costs as the amount of storage in use does fluctuate and will not be full. That's a little too much math with variables this early in the morning for Jeff. So you'll reach $100,000 in about 77 weeks of editorial use. A typical creative editorial run of a theatrical feature or an episodic TV season is 50 weeks, just under a year. This configuration in the cloud will service 1.5 feature films or 1.5 seasons of episodic television, roughly at the $100,000 mark of red ink. So this leaves a little discussion that my tech friends don't even care to hear about. What is the difference between the costs of these two to your business and your bottom line? You understand what an MACRS is and what its importance is on your Form 4562. Equipment that is purchased becomes part of the capitalized value of your business and goes through the depreciation cycle over years of use. That's what capital expenditures have always been about. When you are utilizing cloud services for your post-production, you are living in the world of operational expenses. You are able to use the full cost of operational expenses in the same tax year to offset taxable income for your business. So in using my concept from the beginning, all of that gear on my American Express card, the monthly bill for the cloud is a maximum of $5,568. And while that's more than the $2,800 and the X at the end of the year is higher, it's different in what the tax experts can do with the numbers when it comes time to file with Uncle Sam. Your bottom line for 2020 isn't figured until all the tax forms are filled out. So is cloud right for your business's financial future? It might be. The certain thing is that when you have systems running in the cloud, you only pay for what you use. You don't have that choice when the gear is under your roof. Okay, we're almost back to the tech now. And the tech on this whole cloud thing isn't simply how the computers work. It's how your people can work together, and from almost anywhere. That's probably going to make the HR folks' job a lot easier. So just wait till engineering tells you how integrated they can be with the VFX team. It's time to talk with your tax professionals, and you've got some very rough numbers to compare things from a budgetary standpoint. So when engineering does come in and say that this makes sense to them, that lifting and shifting the work into the cloud will get the job done, and the show's delivered, you're ready to be all on board, and the cloud train can leave the station. Whew. Okay, tech folks, you can come back in now. All right, let's jump into it. First, we'll be getting started with Michael Kames for BeBop and Van Bedient and Carl Soule from Adobe. While I'm back in the studio, all our guests are working from home, but together, how cloud-like. Adobe and BeBop teams, the floor is yours.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, everyone at KeyCode Media. Yes, I am Michael Kamas. I'm Director of Biz Dev over at BeBop Technology. And today we're going to show a little bit about what BeBop can do, especially when it pertains to using Adobe Productions. If you haven't worked with Productions yet, you're going to love it. And we're going to show you how that works on BeBop. Now, as a quick refresher as to what BeBop is virtualizing post-production in the cloud. So we're actively putting your media, your applications, your NLE, all the tools that you use to create and edit a story, we're putting that all in the cloud. The cloud, as you know, is someone else's data center. And we're using three of the big providers out there, the Microsoft Azure, the AWS, Amazon, and of course, GCP Google. And the great thing about these three providers is that they allow us to use very powerful machines in the cloud with a ton of RAM, with a ton of GPU horsepower, and almost an unlimited amount of storage. And the storage that we use in the cloud is in these same data centers. So you can remote in to the BeBop workstation in the cloud and read and write media at hundreds of megabytes a second. So that essentially gives you a virtual LAN in the cloud, and you can scale up and down as you need. Okay, now that I'm through that pitch, let's actually show you what BeBop kind of looks like. First, we have the BeBop client. And the BeBop client is what works on Mac and PC, and it allows you to jump into different organizations. Say you're an administrator that has groups of freelancers working on groups of different projects. You obviously want to keep people and prying eyes from seeing one project or another, or even what that project is named. So by having organizations, we can section off groups of users from other users in a permission-based way. We also have the ability, if you've signed up for it, to use multiple clusters of computers and storage in different regions around the country. So if your users are on the East Coast, that's great. We can spin everything up in a data center on the East Coast, so the data center is closest to those users. And the closer you are to the data center, the better your experience is going to be, because after all, you're remoting into a workstation in that data center. We normally want to be within about 1,000, maybe 1,500 miles of that data center, and that will give you decreased latency. So it's easier to use the machine without it feeling like there's some lag. So what I've done is I've jumped into this Adobe production panel pod, as we call them, and you'll see there's a couple familiar names in here. We've got Carl Soule and Van Bediet from Adobe. They'll be showing you productions on BeBop in just a few minutes, and then you'll see my machine. I have access to all of these machines, and therein lies the beauty of the cloud, is that you are no longer relegated to one person, one computer. I can start a render or an export on any of these machines and then simply launch another workstation. And since everyone is talking to the same shared storage, you can pick up right where you left off while the other machine continues what it's doing. So it really eliminates those, shall we say, lengthy coffee breaks while you wait for renders to continue. We also have really familiar tools like upload and download. So if you want to upload to the shared storage in the cloud, you can browse your local files or folders and then upload those files. And we upload files concurrently to really saturate that connection to get files up as fast as humanly possible. Of course, if I want to download things, well, I have that permission too. And the great thing is that this is done on a permission basis. So as an administrator, you can allow people to upload, or you can disallow people from uploading. So it really gives you a one point to determine if content can move to the cloud and down from the cloud. Of course, if you want to use things like Aspera or Signient, those work too, because we can install those clients on the virtual machine that you're logging into in the cloud. Okay, that's enough context. I'm now going to go back to my workstations. You can see that I have a workstation running. I'm going to bounce back into that workstation. This is a workstation that's sitting about 400 miles north of me. This system is in San Jose, California. I'm in Southern California, and my latency is about 23 or 24 milliseconds, which is very fast, which means when I click on things, the response is there very quickly. The benefit of that, obviously, is that you're forgetting that you're working remote, and it just feels like someone else's computer for the first couple minutes and then you just use it. So when you log into the BeBop workstation, we present a dashboard, and dashboard has a lot of cool things that will help you work that much easier. First, we have all of the storage that we can mount. If you've used Avid Nexus, or you've used Facilis TerraBlock Manager or SNS Evo, all of them have applications which allow you to mount those volumes to that workstation. And we've built that into our dashboard. So you can see that I have 2 or 3 different storage volumes that I can mount or unmount, and they keep the same drive letter. So that means nothing goes offline. What BeBop has also done is work with Adobe at the code level to automatically set cache volumes on faster storage. So you'll get that much more performance because you're not using the pool of storage that you have for your media, you're only using it for cache. What we also have up here is something called BeBop Links, which is a brand new feature on BeBop. And BeBop Links allows me to share any content sitting on BeBop's secure storage in the cloud and send that link to someone, and then they can download that content. So we can set security parameters, such as when it expires. We can set passwords. So this makes it incredibly easy to share the content you've created on BeBop with anyone else. In addition, we also have Receive. What if you're working with an audio house? Maybe they've done a voiceover for you. Great. You can send them a link. They can then upload securely that VO session into the BeBop storage. So again, it makes collaboration on BeBop or even off BeBop easier. But what if you want deeper interop? Well, there's a way for that as well. We have something called OTS, which is called over the shoulder. This allows any user on BeBop to send an email to anyone else on BeBop, and they'll get an invite to say, hey, look at my screen. And then they log in, and they are looking at your screen as if they're looking right over your shoulder. They can see your computer screen. They can hear you talk. We've put audio functionality back and forth. What this does is gives you the ability to interact in real time with someone else watching your edit, and you can pick up their subtle verbal cues, whether they like something, whether they don't like something, move things back 3 frames. It's in real time. So it gives you that synchronous collaboration that everyone wants in the time where we're all distributed in multiple places. What we also have is a little tool that makes it easier for all you Mac folks out there. We understand that a majority of users are using Mac OS, and Mac OS doesn't really work in the cloud so well. So we've built in a function called Enable Command Key. Enable Command Key transforms your Mac keyboard into Windows commands. So that means all the time that you've spent building your Mac hotkeys on a Mac keyboard now will translate, for the most part, into using your editorial tools on BeBop. So it makes kind of moving to the cloud that much easier. So with all that being said, why don't we load up an Adobe Production? I've got a production down here, which I opened a few minutes ago. It loaded all my plugins because we can reach out and get those licenses for your plugins, provided you've purchased them. What it also does is we can load extensions. So if you are running Pluralize, if you are utilizing Frame.io or any of the other extensions that have panels for Adobe, we can load those. So if you're using those in an on-prem way, you can also use them in the cloud. And we don't just limit it to that. If you want to bring in Mogerts through Essential Graphics, you can do that. If you want to use dynamic linking, such as using an After Effects comp, you can link to that. BeBop doesn't prevent you from doing anything you normally would with the application when you're on BeBop. We make it as seamless as possible. Now, if you look on the left-hand side here in my production panel, you'll see those same familiar names. We've got Carl Suleg, we've got Van Bedient from Adobe. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to them so they can show you some of the new features in Adobe Productions.
Thank you, Michael. We're really excited to be here today. And thank you also to the KeyCode team for having us on. Adobe is excited to show you Productions working on BeBop. So Productions is our new collaborative project sharing feature built inside Premiere Pro. And here we're showing it in a distributed workflow, allowing Carl, Michael, and I to all work from home in different locations, but using a centralized hosted point in the BeBop cloud. Carl's going to walk us through a demo of Productions to show us how to stay organized, efficient, and collaborative within a long-form project in Premiere Pro. Carl, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you, Van. So what I have open right now, we have this production open, and what a production is it's a special collection of Premiere Pro projects. And the cool thing about a production is these projects are actually deeply linked under the hood so that you can use multiple projects and you can keep your footage organized, keep your sequences organized, and it's very, very flexible. You can break up your workflow just depending on what you're doing. Right now, what I've done is set this up to cut a trailer based on different scenes within the movie. But this is something that could be set up for a series. You could actually have a single production that has multiple folders and multiple Premiere projects for each episode. And those episodes can even be broken up, and you can get as granular as you want. In a lot of cases, for feature films, we see people making projects for each scene, projects for each reel. And by doing this, you can kind of organically build out whatever your deliverable happens to be. The cool thing about this, we're still using Premiere Pro projects, but this panel, this new panel in Premiere, the production panel, gives me a one-stop shop to see exactly what everybody is working on. So every editor who's working together opens the same production, and instantly you can see at a glance who is working on what. These are folder icons, and they represent just like standard folders. You can put projects inside of those folders to organize things however you need. These icons represent Premiere Pro projects. And at a glance, I can see this project, for example, has a hollow icon. Nobody has that open right now. This one is filled in. That indicates that I have it open. And any icon that has a green pencil means that is what I am currently working inside. That's what I'm modifying and making changes to. So in this case, I have a project here called Hotel that I'm working on. I also have a project called Carl Trailer Cut. And you can see that open over here, and you can see I've got an editing sequence that I'm going through and cutting this trailer together. Now, part of the trick inside of productions is you can organize your media in separate projects from the projects that contain your timelines. And this means your master clips can stay organized in separate projects, and multiple editors can be pulling from those sources. And we never see any cases of duplicate master clips showing up in projects. We actually stay organized and linked back to those master clips. As a quick example of this, I've got this sequence open right now. You can see that there's a number of different clips inside of the sequence. There's no master clips inside of my project. In fact, if I decide I want to reveal this in a project, it is actually going to go and open up a separate project and highlight the clip for me in that separate project. Everything stays linked together. If I decide I want to cut in some additional footage into this, let's say we want this explosion shot, I can load this in the source monitor. I can actually just drag it and drop it if I need to onto my sequence. You'll notice again, there's no copy of that clip that shows up inside of my editing project. This means there's one set of master clips. All the editors are referencing those same master clips. And this is an important differentiation from just a standard folder with a collection of Premiere Pro projects. In a production, the projects are actually linked together, preventing duplicates, making it easy to stay organized. The other thing you'll notice is Van is currently working inside of this project. I can see his name here, and I can see a red lock icon. I still have this project organized. And in fact, you know, Van, this scene's kind of complicated. Do you think you can do just a quick string out for me, a separate sequence? I want to kind of see things contextually, if you don't mind. We can actually go ahead and work together. I can still use this as a source. I can load clips into my source monitor. I can mark in and out points. I can insert, overwrite, edit into the sequence that I'm working on. But Van currently owns the lock in this, and he can actually go in and make changes. In fact, I can already see he's gone ahead and made some changes for me. And I can see that there's actually a little icon up at the top of the project panel that indicates that there's a change that's happened. I can also see that in the production panel, I can see that the name of this is italicized. So this is telling me that I'm no longer looking at the current state. Now, I don't have to close the project and reopen it to see those changes. I can simply use the flyout menu and choose Refresh Project to now see those changes update. And now I can go in and see, oh, here's the string out. I can choose to open this in my source monitor. And then I can use that timeline in the source monitor to cut into my own timeline. In fact, I'll use a common technique used in Premiere Pro. I can load up Van's sequence as a separate timeline and pancake these two together so that now I can see this sequence in the source monitor, this sequence in the program monitor, and I can start to cut that in further. So there's no limit to the number of projects that you can have within a production. There's no limit to the number of folders and subfolders you can break things up into. For a TV show, again, you might create a folder for episodes. Inside that, have each episode, and everything stays organized. You have one production that contains all of these projects. And these projects are actually separate files on disk. What the production looks like, if I were to go up to the top here, click on the flyout menu, I can reveal the production in Explorer and actually see what this looks like. On Windows, it will come up in a Windows Explorer window. You can see here's the production folder itself. It's got a series of folders and subfolders. Let's just say I open up the scenes folder here. You can see a number of Premiere Pro projects. These align perfectly with all the projects in the scene folder inside of my production panel within Premiere. If I rename something in one location, it renames in the other. So for anybody who's dealing with a lot of media, for anybody needing to collaborate, productions are a great workflow for working inside of Premiere, allowing multiple editors access to the same source material, being able to own their own projects where they're making their cuts, making their changes, but still have the ability to just keep one set of assets centrally located. And with BeBop, it's a fantastic solution with Michael, Van, myself, all working remotely and able to dial in, so to speak, and get in and start working together with shared storage and shared workstations. So that's just a little bit about productions. Let's hand it back to the KeyCode Media team. Van, Michael, and myself will be back for Q&A in a little bit.
Van, Carl, and Michael, thanks. All right, now we're going to hand it over to Telestream to briefly introduce you to GLIM. GLIM is a groundbreaking technology that allows users to remotely play mezzanine and professional-grade media files in a web browser. Remember, continue to send us questions on Facebook, Vimeo, and in YouTube. We'll be answering them live in a few minutes.
Hello, everyone. Thanks to KeyCode for having us. My name is Dave Norman. I'm going to be giving you a product demo of our latest product in the Telestream family called GLIM. GLIM is a great tool for remote workflows. GLIM is built to really provide visibility on top of storage devices that are otherwise opaque, especially when you're in a remote work environment. So let's dive in. I've logged into my GLIM server here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on File Browser. What that's going to do is that's going to show me my volumes I have configured on my GLIM server. We also call this the GLIM engine. You'll see these are friendly named, and so there's not the H drive, there's not the X drive, the T drive, or some cryptic UNC path for your operators to have to deal with. The names are actually useful and provide context for the type of media that lives in that folder. So let's click on a directory here called NAS Glimpse Media. This is a NAS device attached to my GLIM engine. We'll dive into the Glimpse Media folder, and let's just pick something. Let's go to DNX, and let's open this episode here. Once we click on it, it'll go ahead and load up on my player. That allows me to then inspect it from a technical perspective, so I can see what information is present at the container level, video essence level, as well as audio essence information. So working backwards, the audio information tells me that I have 8 tracks of audio. It appears that each one of those is a discrete channel. My video essence information tells me this is DNX 145. It gives you some duration, tells me it's about a minute long. Field order, etc., all sorts of nice technical properties about the video. And then what I can do is I can go ahead and play it. So once I hit play, that's now playing. There's a lead in here for a bit. While that's happening, I'm going to go confirm I have my video quality configured. I'm going to turn on subtitles.
In New York City's war on crime,
I'm
The
also
worst
going to turn
criminal
on
offenders
audio
are
meters.
pursued by the detectives of the major case squad. These are their
And so what
stories.
you're seeing here is me playing media completely remotely. A DNX asset that typically would require QuickTime to play this. I'm playing this from a machine that actually I'm present on in Virginia. And the engine itself is present in my home office in New York, where all of my media lives. And so this is an absolute remote scenario where I am not in the office. I'm not in my home office. I'm remote at the moment. I'm playing over a very bandwidth constrained connection. I'm playing this over a connection that has no more than probably 10 to 12 megabits of download or upload bandwidth. You can see it's playing captions, it's displaying VChip information, and I have real-time audio meters. So that clip is now played, and I'm going to go show you a couple other things now. Let's show you some of the plugin capabilities here. The plugins, let's say enumerate, allow me to interact with third-party systems that have RESTful web service interfaces. And so one of the things that exists in the Telestream family is a product called Vantage, and Vantage has a RESTful web service interface. So GLIM can operate as a very interesting and compelling front end to Vantage by building or using plugins that we provide. We have a catalog of these that we can provide to customers. These plugins to drive Vantage workflows. So one of the workflows that I like to show here is using the front end to indicate in and out points. So let's see here, if I go here, there's a time code selector by clicking the duration. And I'm just going to mark an endpoint there. I'm going to mark an out point here. And so that's, what is this? This is about a 2.5 minute piece of content. And I'm now going to reduce that down to about a minute long, give or take. And we'll say this trimmed trailer. That's the new name for the asset I'm going to make with Vantage. And then if I hit submit here, what this does is that submits that asset with those in and out points, and now we'll make an XDCAM HD out of this file so that I can provide that to whomever may be requesting a subclip in XDCAM HD. So that's the Vantage plugin. There's also a really nifty plugin that we call Clip Links. This is great for sending subsets of longer form content. I understand this is just 2.5 minutes, but we'll stay in this clip, and we'll let's go back to the front here for a bit. We'll mark an endpoint here, and we'll mark an out point here. And what this has done is this, again, this is a 2.5 minute piece of content. Say I don't need someone to view the entire asset, or more than likely, they don't want to sit through an entire piece of long form content to review what they need to review. Say this is standards and practices or rights and clearances, whoever it may be, that needs to just look at a subset and not necessarily the entire duration. And if I hit submit here, what this does is this generates a link, and that link can now be sent to anyone that has access to the GLIM engine. And instead of, again, playing the whole asset, what happens is it just now loads up the subclip. And so you'll see at the top there, it highlights that it's playing just the subclip. And so we don't have, again, that entire duration that they're going to play back. It's just, again, that's a shorter file, or that shorter duration from the longer file. So that's subclips using clip links. And let's close this tab, and let's go back to this. If I wanted to, I can also have a look at a high resolution image. Right? And so I can go to any image, any frame here, and then what I can do is I can say that frame I want to generate a link of, and maybe I want to send that to someone in email, or want to get that and download it and use it for a social media post or something like that. But there is a high resolution image generated from that particular timecode point that I just specified in the image link plugin. And so what that's done is that's taken from the source. That's a high resolution image directly from the source. So that's it. Thanks again, Keycode, and hope everyone has a great rest of their week. Appreciate it. Bye-bye now.
All right, and now for our main client presentation today, Brad Boim is joining us from NFL Media to discuss how the NFL channel's post-production team has transitioned to remote post-production workflows. Brad, how are you, and how's your team doing operating remotely?
Thanks, Jeff. It's really great to be here today with you guys. We're doing well. We're very close to the start of the season, so there's a lot of things going on for us. But we've been cranking away for the last 5 months, and we have a lot to look forward to. So things are going really well.
Awesome. It's always good to be safe in these unusual times. So, what was the tech challenge your team at NFL faced that brought you to look at BeBop as the solution?
Sure. The tech challenge really happened for everybody at the same time, right around the end of March. For us, it was about a year prior to that where we connected with Michael and the rest of the BeBop team at NAB and started to look at BeBop as an offset for some of our on-prem workflows. We have a pretty large facility, so there's a lot of baked-in workflows we already had running, but we certainly knew that a cloud workflow would be a really great way for us to expand our capabilities outside of our facility, especially when it gets really busy. But I think when we hit late March and we shut down operations in our facility, we were in a really good position to scale up what we already had with BeBop. We had a smaller level infrastructure up and running, and we were able to sort of step on the gas at that point and really kind of widen it out.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always good to have a plan when you need one. So how did BeBop and Adobe help meet those particular challenges for you?
Immediately as we started to scale out to the cloud, we were able to scale as we needed to. So, we were trying to determine how much post-production we really were going to be able to do from home, because post really is related to the live productions that we're able to do as well. So, we had challenges on the live side just as much as the post-production side. But in some ways, we were maybe a little bit ahead of the curve, having the post-production environment up and running. So it really helped us support our productions as they were starting to figure out how they could do more live shows and do more live to tape shows, which we typically do more live programming. But we did shift into more of a live to tape approach where we would tape earlier and then post produce so that we could account for all the delivery, ingress, egress coming up and down. So in combination with Adobe and BeBop, it's been a pretty successful run for the last 5 months.
Awesome. And everything seemed to happen really at the right calendar year for schedule. Process like once you decided you needed to hit the gas?
Once we were ready to go, it was pretty smooth. I think, the most difficult part for us was getting zero clients, because right when this all hit, it was almost like you were trying to buy toilet paper. Like zero clients and toilet paper were equally in short supply. So our typical vendors that we would get that from were back ordered. So we had to kind of get a little creative with trying to find devices, because for us, we're working maybe a little uniquely. We're working in full high res up in BeBop. So everything we're doing, we're not working in proxy. We're working in ProRes LT. So we definitely need to be able to push 100 meg files around, and the zero client experience really makes a big difference for us to be able to work seamlessly like we would in our facility.
Very cool. Yeah, that zero client challenge at the beginning there, and everything was challenged there in March with supply chain. It was a bit of a mess. So how's the support been with BeBop and Adobe?
Support with Adobe has always been great, and that continues to be great. We're working with them right now on an ongoing basis as we go into the season. With BeBop, I think, the support for us, we've really scaled this out to a pretty large infrastructure in the cloud. So we're really, at this point, we're really more partnering with them on some of these initiatives as we're developing needs that are unique to us. We're working with the technical support folks at BeBop to try to build some technology solutions rather than just get support for the needs that are sort of like in a straight line within the platform. We're trying to come up with creative and unique ways for us to support the live sports production that we typically do. So I think from that level, the support has gone to sort of a next level with us, because we have a very open dialogue with multiple weekly cadences with the BeBop team, and it's all been very, very strong.
Excellent. Sounds like you've had some pretty good results. So what would you say the difference that BeBop has been able to make for your team as opposed to any other solution that you could have looked at?
A lot of it is the sort of ease of transition of getting people into what they're doing. Editors that don't know anything about cloud editing, this sounds complicated when you start to explain it to them. But once they get past the the differences of what they're used to, it becomes second nature very quickly. So that part has transitioned pretty smoothly. I think one of the big benefits that's come out of this for us is the ability to geolocate editors that we maybe wouldn't have been able to use, because we're very heavily on the freelance side for staffing. So we have editors working really outside of what you would consider a comfortable latency zone, and we've pushed it a little further than maybe on paper seemed to make sense. I have an editor working in Toronto, and he is not experiencing any latency issues. He's been there for 4 months, working 5 days a week. We've got folks in the Bay Area, Oregon, Colorado. So it's really allowed us to not only hire people that we couldn't hire because they're not local to Los Angeles, but a lot of our editors have actually, had the desire to get out of LA right now because of what's going on. So for them to be able to go maybe back with their family and still be able to work in a typical freelance mode for them, I think it's kind of the best of all possible worlds for employees and for us to have that talent pool that we can tap into. Makes sense. And anytime you can avoid a freeway commute and just walk down the hall, that's even better. So what do you see as the next thing for you guys in terms of your integration with BeBop? Where are you going to expand and deepen your use of the platform? Sure. But, the next thing's kind of happening in real time right now. We're scaling it out. We've made the commitment for the upcoming season to really push a lot of our workflows into the BeBop environment. So from where we were 5 months ago to where we are now, I don't think Michael could have really envisioned this either. This is definitely ballooned quite a bit. We're running 85 VMs right now across 2 different pods. We've got 120 terabytes of storage. We're running multiple workflows, whether it's editorial or the graphics department. So a lot of that expansion is part of like the month of August, where we're not going to just turn on 85 machines overnight. So we're doing it in some iterative ways. But every couple of days, we're getting more machines online. I would say within the next week or so, we'll have this entire ecosystem up and running. And then we just have to kind of, the season will be complicated for many reasons this year. So I think we have the technology solutions kind of laid out pretty well. We just have to kind of, sort of ebb and flow with the production needs and make sure that we can accommodate everybody. Sounds good. We had a question come in from Andy. Are you pushing your entire MAM into the cloud so it can tie into BeBop, or only pushing media assets on a need-to-use model? That's a great question. So we have multiple MAM systems on-prem and in the cloud. So our on-prem system is accessible via VPN, so folks can browse it remotely, and then we have automation workflows they can trigger to deliver from the building, from our facility to BeBop, which is used all the time, every day. We also have a huge sort of like our archive is in private cloud object storage. So we have another MAM that folks can go in to look for legacy content, run similar workflows to transfer things wherever they want. And then we're also using Frame as sort of a midpoint, which is very much a Swiss Army knife. It serves a lot of different workflows for us. So there's no MAM or PAM running per se in the cloud, but we have MAMs running in various places that can deliver to the cloud. A hub and spoke approach using the cloud. Makes sense. So you've got a heart out. So let's get into the Q&A, and we're going to get the entire panel together so we can answer all kinds of questions. We'll be right back with the entire panel. All right, we're back. So if you have questions, please toss them into the Facebook or YouTube chat sections or comment sections. And if you're on the Vimeo platform on our landing page, just toss them in the chat there, and we will try to address everything as it comes through.
This is the point where Jeff has to put on his glasses. All right. We had a question early on from Brad, which is going to be, I think it's regarding BeBop. Can I install vMix and open remote ports also?
A great question. BeBop is running in Windows, and because it's a complete virtualized OS and it's not a web page or Flash, we can run a number of Windows applications, native applications. What it comes down to is, does that software allow you to run it in a virtualized environment without paying extra or getting a special license? A lot of software vendors require you, if you are going to virtualize, to pay a little bit extra. So there's nothing fundamentally that would stop vMix from running. The other point that was brought up was, can you open ports? And that's on a case-by-case basis, because BeBop thrives on security, right? We thrive on TPN and MPAA and CDSA and all the other organizations that validate that BeBop is secure. And we start opening ports, that leads into a security debacle. So it's really on a one-off basis.
Perfect. Makes sense. Question from Gene. Brad, you mentioned you had an editor in Toronto on BeBop. What's the connection speed needed to get a similar editing experience to being in front of the machine with minimal latency?
That's an excellent question. What we found is the internet connection speed probably plays a lesser factor than the latency does. So, you don't necessarily need a beefy internet connection, but I think if you have, and I'm just sort of ballparking minimums here, if you have 40 to 50 download and, 7 to 10 upload, I think you're in a pretty good sweet spot. I haven't seen anybody with much in the way of performance problems there. I would encourage hardline connecting using a zero client, but I do think that the desktop client over Wi-Fi does certainly serve a purpose, but I think for the optimal experience, that is what I would suggest. From a latency standpoint, we were having all kinds of mixed readings when we were running some of the available latency measurement speeds. So we actually stood up a server in our BeBop environment that we could have editors ping. So now when we send them instructions to run a ping test, we can get an exact latency measurement, and we have a good feel for what will and won't work. And that's been our sort of benchmarking for that process.
Makes sense. And for those who don't understand the difference between the amount of connection speed and latency, connection speed is the size of the pipe that comes into your house. Latency is how fast the water can get down it. Bigger pipes can get you more water, but it may not be moving as fast as you think it is. So that's where that is. Question from Anthony. What MAM sits best? Michael, I think that's probably geared toward you.
Sure. This kind of goes hand in hand with the last question I answered, is that because we're utilizing Windows VM, we can put an Adobe panel in there, right? A lot of MAM manufacturers make panels that you can run in Adobe, an extension, so you can access your MAM, whether it's levels, whether it's CatDV, EMAM, the list goes on and on. So I think it tracks more towards what is your current MAM strategy. Are you doing a hybrid where some of it's in the cloud, some of it's on-prem? Are you doing everything in the cloud? So I don't think there's one that is better than another, because it all goes to how you're using your media and what locations. But what BeBop can do is say, look, as long as you run in Windows, you're 90% of the way there, because after that, it's just doing a little trial and error to make sure media is being managed correctly.
Very cool. Question for the Telestream folks. Can I play back IMF or DCP files over GLIM?
Yes, this is Eric. Absolutely. So you can load up the CPLs within your GLIM engine, and that will play your IMF or DCP package. And typically that's even difficult to play on-prem, because those are approaching, if it's a UHD, about 900 megabits a second, and the GLIM engine can load it up within a couple seconds, and you can view that remotely.
Very cool. And a question from Malek, and this is a loaded question. Can we specify which cloud service of the three which you use we want used on our account?
That's I can answer that, and then unless Brad wants to, but when we talk about when we go into the different clouds, I think we need to step back from where BeBop is and say what are you using right now? Let's say you're already using S3 to store content. Great. That means you should use Amazon for BeBop because you can move content between the BeBop storage, which is your EBS GP2 storage, move that between that tier and then your second tier, which is S3. There's no charge for doing that. That's free. If you already have content in, let's say, Google, and you're running BeBop on Amazon, now you're dealing with egress fees because you're transferring content between the two. So that's one consideration. Also, we talk about geography. Where are the data centers, right? If Google doesn't have a data center there, but you want to use Google, it's not going to fly because you need lower latency. So then you may have to go with another provider. So there isn't a, here's the best, go with this one. It corresponds to what your cloud storage strategy is, and then what data center is located near you.
Very cool. Question from Gene. Can you explain what a zero client is and what it does?
Do you want me to take that?
Sure.
Sure. Well, if you look at your camera, I have one right here. This is a zero client. When you use a computer, a laptop, desktop, I know all of you are doing this. You've got 60 tabs open in Chrome and you're streaming Pandora and you're wireless while your kids are watching Netflix. Okay, that's not good, right? You're clogging up the network. Your local machine has too many things going on in the background, and it degrades your real-time performance with that cloud that you're using with utilizing BeBop. With a zero client, you don't get any of that malarkey. Reason being is because the only job this box has in life is to connect to a virtual machine somewhere. So there is no OS. There is no Pandora with 60 tabs. There is no streaming from Spotify, and even better, there's no wireless. It's all wired. So a zero client allows you to connect to BeBop without any of the underpinnings of a bloated OS. It eliminates all the latency that your OS is causing. Plus, it's the ultimate in security. Because there's no OS, you can't upload or download from this. And best yet, they're under $300. So you can buy a fleet of these, which is a lot of our clients do, and just send this and a couple monitors out to an editor and say, here, go. And you don't have to monkey with their router. You don't have to monkey with software. You just use this. So it's really the best experience.
And one of the other things that we've also run into with a few clients is they know that there could be problems with someone's router at their home. So they will put a router in the DMZ that completely segregates the zero client environment from everybody else. You can't even ping it on the network. So
a good way of thinking about that is if any IT person has set up a voice over IP network at your office, it's the same concept as that. You segregate all that data for BeBop and the zero client off to its own network, so you're not running into interference issues with data transfer and other people using the network. So set it up as a voice over IP, much like you would do that. Set QoS for the right protocol and port, and you're good to go.
Very cool. Interesting question from Pavlo. When speaking about lower latency, what is considered low for proper editing? Now, my take on that would be single millisecond latency, or basically single digit latency. What has everyone else's experience been with that?
You want me to take that?
Sure.
Okay. I don't want to monopolize. So latency. I'm a tech guy. I like numbers, but I think people tend to put too much emphasis on the latency number, because if we take a look at all the things that give you latency, your keyboard, your mouse, your monitor, your internet connection, the latency of the VM in the data center, adding additional routers, all of that is cumulative. In fact, your local machine, the machine that you're watching me talk on right now, your editing system is probably over 100 milliseconds of latency already. Now, we don't perceive that because we can't grok that kind of low latency. It's instantaneous. So what we normally find is if the collective latency is under about 300 milliseconds, give or take, you're fine. If you do some research, you'll find that most humans perceive things under 0.2 of a second being instantaneous. The average human response time is 210 milliseconds. So if we take all those numbers, What we normally find is where we stand up BeBop, if that's within 60, maybe 70 milliseconds, you're going to have no issue. That being said, Brad had mentioned editor in Toronto. I know that we have folks on the East Coast using West Coast BeBop data centers, and that's over 80 milliseconds. So we like to stay under 60 milliseconds, and that usually gives you the experience that you need.
So also for multicam editing on premises, general rule of thumb has always been below 60 milliseconds to make people happy. Question for on GLIM, what protection does GLIM offer for media files? Can you watermark it, only use Active Directory to log in?
Yes and yes. You can watermark, you can use Active Directory, you can use HTTPS, you can use certificates. So you can basically have either public facing or private VPN.
Very cool. Brad, I think this one actually would be perfect for you. Paul is asking, with so much time and resources going into cloud-based remote working, will this method of work be considered even after the pandemic has settled down?
I would say yes, and I'd say one of the main reasons for us is that we're in a kind of a unique situation of building out a brand new facility, a broadcast facility here in Los Angeles, which will go live next year. And it gives us the opportunity now to determine if our facility should be a fully on-prem operation or if we want to create more of a hybrid approach. And I think that is a huge part of the thought process as we go forward. And the timing for us is in some ways good because we can make those decisions, and our experience of what we've been doing for the past 5 months and what the rest of this year and into next year is going to be, I think is going to drive those decisions. Where we end up in terms of a hybrid model, still a little TBD, but I think it's definitely here to stay in some respects.
Awesome. Anyone else want to jump in on that Pandora's box question? Once we've opened it, is everyone going back?
I think we're seeing pretty consistent messaging from customers that it'll definitely be a new normal, and it'll take shape as things move forward. But it's great to have the platforms like BeBop to give us that flexibility. Productions hosted there, which I know is a big part of what NFL's got planned as well. And it's definitely an interesting but exciting path forward.
I think going into this, there was a trust factor that maybe I didn't have about an editor sitting at home for an 8-hour day and how productive they would be. And there's a little bit of a lack of oversight. But I've been pleasantly surprised. I think our team has worked extremely hard, and I almost feel like in some ways they're working more hours and harder than they would if they were in the building.
Yeah, Jeff, to add a little bit more to that, it's funny because we're seeing analytics that people, when they work from home, actually log in earlier, work earlier. Then we see them log off for lunch, and then we see them log off earlier in the afternoon. But a lot of times they come back later. So it's interesting to see these work trends. To echo a little bit of what Brad said, I think when the pandemic hit several months ago, I think a lot of folks were looking for a stopgap. What can we do to fix this right now? Because it'll all blow over. It'll just go away magically. And I think what people have realized over the past several months is that it's not going away magically. It's not just disappearing. But I think they're also seeing that given the time this has been out there, that maybe we should be revisiting the storefront. Maybe we should be revisiting having this building when it's going to take forever for this to come back to normal. So maybe we should look at downsizing our physical footprint and keeping people working remote. So I think we've seen kind of a move from the stopgap to this is the new normal.
This really feels to me like the same thing that happened back at the beginning of the 2010s when the tsunami hit. And suddenly, all of those outliers that were holding on to tape workflows for dear life suddenly realized that they just had to kind of move forward. And, I really feel that this is something that we're not going back to.
All right. Andy is asking, do we need to have an RLM license server in the cloud next to the BeBop servers to use various plugins, Red Giant, Boris, Film Impact, and Premiere? And is there a check-in and check-out process for plugins for editors?
Great question. BeBop supports multiple ways of licensing plugins, whether it's node locked or whether it's a Flex RLM server. or if you have one that's on-prem, BeBop can open up poke holes through our firewall, so to speak, and reach out and talk to your on-prem license server. If IT doesn't want to do that, then we can spin up a Flex server, an RLM server on our end in our virtual LAN that will spit out licenses. The only thing that gets a little bit tricky is node locked, because in the cloud, while you might always get this amount of processors and this GPU, it may be a different serial number. It's still the same model, just a different serial number, and a lot of plugins are authenticated in a node-locked way based on the MAC address or a hardware component. So a node-locked can get a little bit tricky. We have to do some things in the background to make it almost a reserved instance, so you can always get that machine. But we work with several clients who have not only on-prem servers and bot servers as well, not just plugins, and we can tap right into those. So there are multiple ways to tackle that.
Very cool. Carlos is asking, he has questions about plugins, but those were answered now. Do you always access the same machine? Can you upload full res media to it?
Fantastic questions. Yes, when you work with BeBop, we bill on a user basis. So how many creatives there are, and we can certainly name the machines: Bob's machine, Jill's machine, no problem. And then every time you go and use it, your settings are there, so that's no problem. That being said, what we normally do is create a golden master, right? An image that has all your apps and everything. So everyone who logs in, no matter what machine they get, they're getting all those plugins and all those apps. But we find that users are creatures of habit. So if they were using system number 10, when they log in tomorrow, they're going to use system 10 as well. So that completely works. And I love what Brad brought up about high res. Yes, you don't need to edit proxy in the cloud. That's a fallacy, because remember, your screen at your desk is just a window into the VM in the cloud. So you don't have to worry about that 4K or 8K payload of streaming that, because you're only streaming the difference in pixels in your program monitor. So yes, we have several clients that are doing 4K, several clients that are doing ProRes 422 HQ. We have a lot of folks doing motion graphics in ProRes 4x4. Which obviously is a lot better than animation, but still, that's a tough piece of gristle. And as long as you want to pay for that storage in the cloud, and you have enough pipes to upload that, day in and day out, not a problem.
One thing I wanted to add to that as well, if I can, is from a troubleshooting perspective, when you're talking about working with high-res media, one challenge that I've seen for people not using BeBop is, in a lot of cases, they're just reliant on whatever if they have a MacBook Pro at home, or they have, an older laptop. The really nice thing about this is you're getting consistency of hardware without having to make a huge capital expenditure, and putting that heavy iron in people's homes. And I think that's one of the huge benefits, is that it is a consistent experience, because you can specify the type of hardware being used based on what type of asset you're working with, everything from whether you're working natively with Red, or you're just working with ProRes proxy, or anything in between.
That's one of the things also about the cloud hardware. Some of the configurations that are possible, you would never want to even touch if they were on-prem, unless you're doing extremely high-end finishing. Some of this stuff is rip-snorting supercar level machines. The other thing also about what's coming back to your house is its pixel differential. So the change between this frame and the next frame, that's the only thing that's sent. It's not the same. It's not the entire image every single frame. So there's not as heavy a payload as people would expect. And your connectivity back to that cloud really is just command and control, keyboard and mouse. So the bandwidth levels are not what a lot of people are accustomed to when they think of how they're moving media inside on their internal network. Let's see. Is the experience on BeBop for After Effects just like you showed with Premiere?
Yes, there's a couple notes to that. Because we're not preventing you from using the app how you wouldn't use it on-prem, yeah, there's no difference. There are some things to consider. After Effects works really well with machines that have a very high clock speed. It loves clock speed. When you're in the cloud, you traditionally get more cores than the latest in clock speed. So the performance, while it's better in the cloud than you would have on-prem, it's not light years better. And that's, just with how it's written. That being said, you can still do dynamic linking. You can still set a render or add things to the render queue in After Effects. You can still use plugins. Nothing is stopped. We don't prevent any of that. So the experience is still really good.
Very cool. And then this is one that comes up consistently all over the place. Malik is asking, can I install and run Wirecast from a cloud server like BeBop?
Well, I can answer half of that. Obviously, Wirecast is Telestream, so Telestream has to, I don't want to say sanction, but ensure that their software is able to run in a virtualized environment, and that's okay. Again, that is something the software manufacturer has to sanction. If it's a Windows app, which it is, I believe, that's Mac and Windows, right? Yeah. So we can certainly install it. We typically find that that most people want to use the on-prem box, the gear. That seems to work real well for people as opposed to putting it on BeBop. But we can certainly give it a shot. Again, it just comes down to security, and I think it may come down to a pricing discussion. We find that BeBop works better for teams of users rather than just one person. Because there's still a base level of infrastructure that you need. For example, Jeff, if you have 10 editors versus 2 editors on-prem, you still got to get the SAN, right? You still got to get the switch. You still got to get everything in place. And deploying all that for one user may be cost prohibitive, but as soon as you deploy it for one user, you can easily add on another one, and the price is very inexpensive. So I think it would come down to more of a pricing discussion of, does it make financial sense to run Wirecast in a VM environment for only one person? But fundamentally, there is no reason we can't run it.
So that raises the question of things like Evercast, getting video out to other folks, other collaborators, as just a straight video feed.
And that's a really good question. And you'll probably notice I'm going to speak much slower now, and I'm going to be very careful in what I'm saying. We are well aware that people are wanting, we used to call it baseband output, right? HDMI output, SDI output, or maybe even just a full frame rate, sync audio and video, low latency stream. I'm not saying we're going to have something like that soon, but I am saying that it's a great idea and something that we've known about for a long time. So as a complement to our OTS product, which already allows users to see each other's screens and talk via audio, I think that high quality video playback and sharing in real time that you would get from Evercast is something that BeBop is working on very, very hard.
Sounds like some developers are hard at work somewhere.
Friday is one of my most favorite days of the week. Reason being is Friday is when our VP of engineering shows new features. And these last couple Fridays have been really fun.
Kid in a candy store.
Yes.
I think that extends all the questions. Is there anything else that we should throw out there as a softball to either of you?
I think to go back to productions, obviously, there's the teams paradigm and there's the productions paradigm. The productions, at its base is for everyone in the same building to work with shared storage and the production panel, so you can use the same media, same parts at the same time. I don't want to glaze over the fact that you can do that in the cloud. Right? Because in the cloud, everyone's on a virtual LAN, a virtual network. So the power of productions to use it not only for a team of users who are landlocked in the same 4 walls, but also to then put that in the cloud, and it's still the same group of folks just distributed. It blows my mind. And I think once people grok the fact that you can do that and not have to be within the same 4 walls, it completely changes how you edit and the way that a lot of our common clients that Adobe and Carl and Van and BeBop have. It's amazing because you just hear you see the light bulb click on, and it's on camera. You see it just click over, and they realize, yeah, this is just like editing within the same 4 walls.
Yeah, because you're in the same 4 virtual walls up there. I mean, literally, that is it. Your facility is just simply there instead of here, and you're just looking through. You're controlling through the window as to what's happening there.
It's still all actually happening in the cloud. The elves up in the cloud make it really happen. You're telling them what to do.
Yeah, it's the best thing about with productions, especially the paradigm of how productions works and everything, is familiar enough to most people that it doesn't require a huge learning curve to just jump in and use it as well. It just kind of works the way people expect it to. So, that's been really, really big on getting it adopted with people. And by adding BeBop to it and pushing it to the cloud, it just does what you expect it to do.
We're just about out of time. We've got a slew of other questions, but we've got some hard outs for folks. So, my apologies to Matt Damon, and we're going to wrap it up. We will try to address these other questions in a different way, because we still, this is an important discussion. We still want to have it. Thanks to our entire panel for joining us today. If you've got any questions regarding the whether cloud's good for your business, whether the tech is good for your business, please don't hesitate to reach out to us here at KeyCode Media. We will hook you up with the folks from various entities. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.